I had just signed the last of the paperwork on our new house when my phone buzzed. It was a text from my wife's coworker, a woman named Patrice who I'd met maybe twice at company holiday parties. We weren't close. We had no reason to communicate, so when her name lit up my screen at 9:47 on a Tuesday night, something in my chest dropped before I even read the words. "I'm sorry to bother you. I didn't know who else to contact. Can we talk?" I set down my pen. The real estate agent was still gathering her copies across the table, chatting about the neighborhood school ratings, the proximity to the highway. I smiled and nodded and felt absolutely none of it. I typed back, "What's this about?" 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then, "It's about your wife. And my husband." I remember the exact sound the pen made when it hit the table. My name is Daniel. I'm 51 years old. I spent 22 years building a career in commercial insurance, the kind of work that isn't glamorous but pays well and demands precision. I met my wife, Sandra, at a conference in Atlanta 14 years ago. She was sharp, funny, the kind of woman who could walk into a room and immediately understand the social architecture of it. We got married after 2 years of dating. We bought a small house in the suburbs of Columbus. We had a daughter, Lily, who was 9 years old at the time this story begins. I want to be clear about something before I go any further. I was not a perfect husband. I worked too many hours. I missed dinners. There were stretches of weeks where Sandra and I were more like efficient roommates than a married couple. I knew it. She told me. I promised to do better, and sometimes I did, and sometimes I didn't. But I was faithful. In 14 years, I never once looked elsewhere. That mattered to me. I believed it mattered to her too. Her colleague, Marcus, had joined her company about 18 months before that Tuesday night. He was 44, divorced, and according to Sandra, brilliant at client development. She mentioned him occasionally. Marcus landed the Hartfield account. Marcus gave a great presentation. I registered his name the way you register weather forecasts. Relevant in the moment, forgotten quickly. I had no reason to be suspicious. That's the part that still gets me, even now. There was no dramatic shift in her behavior, no sudden coldness, no unexplained absences. She came home at normal times. She laughed at my jokes. She helped Lily with her spelling tests on Wednesday nights. Whatever was happening existed in a completely separate compartment of her life, one she had sealed so carefully that I walked past it every single day without knowing the door was there. Patrice and I spoke on the phone that night after I got home. Sandra had taken Lily to a school event and wasn't back yet. I sat in the kitchen with the lights on low and listened. Patrice had found messages on her husband Marcus's phone 3 weeks earlier. She'd spent those 3 weeks in a private kind of devastation, trying to decide what to do. She hadn't confronted him yet. She hadn't told anyone. She'd been carrying it alone until she found my number through Sandra's work directory and decided that whatever happened next, I deserved to know. She was remarkably calm when she spoke, the kind of calm that comes after you've already done all the crying. She described what she'd seen in enough detail that there was no room for misunderstanding, no version of events where the messages could mean something else. She told me it had been going on for at least 8 months. She told me they saw each other on Tuesday afternoons when Sandra told me she had a standing team meeting. There were no standing Tuesday team meetings. I checked with Sandra's assistant 2 days later. There never had been. I thanked Patrice. I asked if she was okay. She said she didn't know yet. I told her I understood after I hung up. I sat in the kitchen for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I didn't feel the thunderclap of emotion I would have expected from news like this. Instead, I felt something that I can only describe as a quiet rearrangement, like a building settling after an earthquake. Things were moving into new positions. The architecture of my last 14 years was being reorganized around a fact I hadn't known existed. I felt, for a long stretch of that night, almost nothing at all. Looking back, I understand that nothing was protection. My mind knew that what was coming would require clarity and steadiness, and it was kind enough to give me that before the pain arrived. Sandra came home around 10. She kissed me on the cheek and asked how the signing went. I told her it went fine. I asked her how the school event was. She told me Lily had performed in a little choir piece and that it was adorable. I watched her move around the kitchen making tea and I thought, I am looking at a stranger, not with hatred. Not with hatred. Not yet. with something closer to grief. I did not say a word that night, or the next. I'd already decided, sitting in that quiet kitchen, that however I responded to this, I was not going to do it reactively. I was going to do it with my eyes fully open. I called a divorce attorney on Thursday morning. Her name was Catherine, and she had been recommended by a colleague who'd gone through an ugly custody situation 2 years prior. I told Catherine everything I knew. She listened without interrupting, then told me the first thing I needed to do was documentation. Whatever you know, find a way to verify it, she said. Don't confront, don't tip your hand. Not yet. I nodded even though she couldn't see me. I was good at documentation. It was, after all, my job. Over the following 3 weeks, I became a different kind of precise. I noted dates, times, inconsistencies. Patrice, who had by this point quietly confirmed what she knew with a few careful conversations of her own, agreed to keep me informed if anything changed. She was not acting out of revenge. She was acting out of the same quiet devastation I recognized in myself. We were not allies so much as two people standing in the same wreckage. I also spoke with a financial advisor. Quietly, I wanted to understand exactly where we stood, what was marital property and what wasn't, what the signing of the new house that week actually meant for our situation going forward. It was during one of those conversations that I learned Sandra had opened a credit card in our joint name 8 months ago. The same approximate timeline Patrice had given me, and had charged nearly $11,000 to it. Dinners, a weekend trip to Chicago in February she'd told me was a work conference. A hotel in Cincinnati I'd never heard of. I printed every statement. I put them in a folder. I labeled the folder Insurance Review, Q3, and placed it in my work bag. I want to tell you about the Tuesday I finally knew for certain, because this is the part that changed everything for me emotionally. Sandra left for what she called her afternoon meeting at 1:45. I had worked from home that day, which was not unusual. Lily was in school. The house was quiet. I didn't follow her. I want to be clear about that. What I did was simpler and more ordinary. I looked at the location sharing app on my phone, the one we'd set up 3 years earlier, when Sandra's mother had a health scare and we wanted to be able to check on each other. Sandra had never asked to remove it. I had never thought to look. I looked. She was not at her office building. She was not at a restaurant or a conference room or anywhere a Tuesday teen meeting would be held. The blue dot on my screen was stationary at a Marriott Courtyard 20 minutes from our house. I took a screenshot. I sent it to myself by email. I added it to the folder. Then I closed the app, made a cup of coffee, and sat at my desk and worked until 4 o'clock like nothing had happened. That was the moment I realized how completely I had reorganized myself around the situation. I wasn't numb anymore. I had simply decided. The decision was made. What remained was execution. I filed for divorce on a Wednesday morning, 6 weeks after Patrice's first text. Sandra came home from work that evening to find the papers on the kitchen counter. I was sitting in the living room. Lily was at her grandmother's for the night. I had arranged that carefully. Whatever happened next, my daughter would not be in the room for it. Sandra came in holding the envelope. She wasn't crying. She looked, of all things, caught. Not heartbroken, not shocked. Caught. Dan, she said. I know about Marcus, I said. I know about the hotel. I know about the credit card. I know about the Tuesdays. She sat down. For a moment, neither of us said anything. Then she said, How long have you known? 6 weeks. Something shifted in her face. I think she was recalculating, the way you recalculate when you realize the person across from you has been playing chess while you thought you were playing checkers. We can fix this, she said. I know we could probably go to counseling, I said. I know there are things I did wrong in this marriage. I know I worked too much, and I wasn't always present. I thought about that. But I need you to understand that I'm not filing these papers because of what I did wrong. I'm filing them because of what you chose to do. Those are two separate things. She started to cry then. Real tears, the kind I recognized. I felt the familiar pull of them, the 14-year muscle memory of wanting to comfort her when she was hurting. I didn't move. What about Lily? She said. Lily will be fine, I said. I'm going to make sure of that. That's why I've already spoken to an attorney. What I hadn't anticipated was her brother. His name is Robert, and he'd always been loud in the cheerful, harmless way of men who never grew fully into adulthood. He called me 2 days after Sandra received the papers. He was not cheerful. "You're destroying your family over nothing," he said. "Men have wandered since the beginning of time. That's just reality. You think Sandra's parents didn't go through something like this? You patch it up. You move forward. That's what grown men do." I listened to the entire speech. Then I said, "Robert, I'm going to need you to not call me again." He called 4 more times over the following week. The 5th call came at 11 p.m. on a Thursday, and when I didn't answer, he left a voicemail telling me I was weak, that I was letting my pride blow up my daughter's home, that Sandra deserved better than a man who would walk away at the first sign of trouble. I saved the voicemail. I sent it to Catherine. "Keep everything," she said. I was getting very good at keeping everything. Sandra's family had apparently decided on a strategy, because 2 days after Robert's call stopped, her mother, Diane, came to the house unannounced. I opened the door and she walked in like she'd been invited. Diane had always been a woman who moved through the world with the confidence of someone who expected accommodation. In 14 years, I had accommodated her regularly. I was finished with that. She sat down at my kitchen table and told me that Sandra had made a mistake, but that I was about to make a bigger one. She talked for several minutes. She referenced Lily's well-being approximately 8 times. She talked about what divorce does to children. She talked about what forgiveness looks like in a real marriage. Then she said something I've turned over in my mind many times since. She said, "Daniel, if it makes it easier, I give you permission to have your own outside relationship." Sandra agrees. "Whatever you need, just don't blow up this family." I looked at her for a long moment. "Diane," I said, "I think you should go. I'm not going anywhere until... I'm going to call the police if you don't leave my home," I said. "That's not a threat. That's information." She left. She was furious. I closed the door and stood in my hallway and felt the particular exhaustion of watching people reveal themselves. The thing about Robert's phone calls and Diane's visit was that they had both been documented, dated, and added to what Catherine was now calling our file. Because what nobody in Sandra's family seemed to understand was that family pressure during divorce proceedings, especially pressure that crosses into harassment, becomes legally relevant very quickly. Catherine was calm and methodical in a way I deeply respected. She laid out our position without drama. We had financial misconduct, the credit card charges, including the trip to Chicago and the Cincinnati hotel, qualified as marital waste under Ohio law. We had a clear timeline. We had documentation. We had a pattern of behavior from Sandra's family that, while not criminal, painted a picture worth presenting. "They're going to try to make this about your emotional state," Catherine said. "They're going to argue that you're acting out of anger, that you're not thinking about your daughter. Don't give them anything to work with." I nodded. I was not acting out of anger. I had moved past anger into something quieter and more permanent. Marcus, for what it's worth, had a different problem. Patrice had filed for divorce the same week I did. Unlike me, she had confronted him directly and immediately, in the explosive way that felt more honest to who she was. He had moved out of their house within days. Their situation was its own separate devastation, and I had no place in it. But the financial records Catherine's team subpoenaed during discovery told part of the story. Several of those $11,000 in charges had been supplemented by Marcus's own credit card at the same locations on the same dates. It created a picture that was difficult to argue with. I did not enjoy any of this. I want to be clear about that. There was no satisfaction in the financial discovery, no thrill in the documentation. Every piece of paper was just another piece of proof that my marriage had been a thing I believed in that had not been real in the way I believed it was. The grief, when it came, and it came in the middle of ordinary moments, loading the dishwasher or sitting in my car in a parking garage, was quiet and enormous. I cried twice, both times alone, both times briefly. Then I put it away and kept going. 2 weeks before our scheduled mediation, Sandra filed a motion claiming I had hidden assets. I hadn't. Catherine and I had been completely transparent. The motion was, in Catherine's words, a delay tactic, possibly suggested by Robert, who had apparently convinced Sandra to hire a more aggressive attorney. It cost me $3,000 additional and 6 additional weeks to resolve. The motion was dismissed. The week after it was dismissed, Robert showed up at my office. I work on the 4th floor of a building downtown. I was in the middle of a client meeting when my assistant knocked and told me there was a man in the lobby asking for me and refusing to leave. I excused myself, went to the lobby, and found Robert standing near the elevator bank with the posture of a man who had rehearsed what he was going to say on the drive over. I called the police. Right there, in the lobby, with him watching me do it. I did not argue with him, did not raise my voice, did not give him the confrontation he'd come looking for. I made the call, waited for the officers to arrive, and gave a clear account of the previous phone calls, the voicemail, and now this visit to my place of employment. Robert was escorted out. He was not arrested that day, but he was told clearly what the consequences of further contact would be. Catherine filed for a restraining order the next morning. It was granted within a week. I'm going to tell you about the hardest night, because I think it's the part that matters most. Sandra called me on a Sunday, about a month before the divorce was finalized. It was late. She was crying, not the strategic tears I'd seen the night I served her, but something raw. She said she knew she had destroyed our family. She said she didn't know why she had done it. She said she missed our life. I believed her. That's the complicated part. I believed that in that moment, she meant every word. I also believed that the version of our life she was missing had not existed in the way either of us had thought. You can grieve something that wasn't real. You can miss a story that turned out to be only partly true. I understood that. I felt it myself. I hope you find peace, Sandra, I said. I mean that. But I can't help you with this. She asked if we could talk in person. I said I didn't think that would be good for either of us. She said, "What about Lily? Don't you think Lily deserves her parents to try?" And this is the moment I want to be careful about, because it's the moment that's easiest to misread. Lily deserves to grow up in a home where she sees what honesty looks like, I said. I'm not going to teach her that loyalty is optional by staying in a marriage that was built on a lie. That's not me protecting myself. That's me protecting her. Sandra didn't say anything after that. We stayed on the phone for another minute in silence and then said goodnight. I sat outside on my back porch after I hung up. It was October and cold. The sky was clear. I thought about the first house Sandra and I had rented together, a second-floor apartment in a neighborhood neither of us could really afford, how we'd eaten takeout on moving boxes because we hadn't owned furniture yet, how she'd laughed at something I said and I had thought, sitting on that cardboard box. This is the person I want to spend my life with. I let myself feel that for a while, the whole weight of it. Then I let it go. The divorce was finalized on a Thursday in March. Lily lives with me 4 days a week and with Sandra 3. We co-parent with a careful professionalism that occasionally, unexpectedly, tips into something almost warm, because we both love our daughter more than we dislike each other. Sandra and Marcus did not stay together. I learned that secondhand, through Lily mentioning something offhand about 6 months after everything was done. I felt nothing in particular about it. Not satisfaction, not sadness. It was information, like a weather forecast. I moved into the new house alone, the one we'd signed the papers on the same week Patrice first texted me. My attorney had ensured that since the purchase happened during the documented period of marital misconduct, the financial settlement reflected that. I painted Lily's room yellow because she asked me to. I bought a kitchen table that seats 6 because I wanted the space to feel like something could happen there someday. I made dinner most nights and ate it while reading or watching something ordinary on television. Robert, as far as I know, has never told anyone the restraining order existed. People perform their bravado privately and suffer its consequences privately. I bear him no particular animosity. He was protecting his sister in the only way he knew how. Diane called me once about a year later. She didn't apologize exactly, but she said something to the effect of hoping Lily and I were doing well. I told her we were. I told her Lily had made the honor roll and was taking swimming lessons. Diane sounded older on the phone than I remembered. Patrice and I have had coffee twice. Not romantically. I want to be clear, but as two people who went through something parallel at the same time and understand something about the other that most people in their lives don't. She is doing well. She has a different job now, in a different part of the city. She seems lighter. I want to tell you the thing I actually learned from all of it, because this is the part I've thought about most. I think the greatest trick that betrayal plays on you is that it makes you believe the pain is the event, the discovery, The confrontation, the papers, the attorneys, the sleepless nights, those feel like the trauma, and they are. But they're not where the real shift happens. The real shift happens when you realize that the version of your life you've been grieving was always partly a story you told yourself. Not because the love wasn't real. The love was real. But love doesn't make a marriage. Honesty makes a marriage. Consistency makes a marriage. Consistency makes a marriage. The willingness to be known and to be ordinary and to not need to escape. That's what makes a marriage. I didn't fail at those things perfectly, but I tried. And at the end of what turned out to be the worst year of my adult life, I could say clearly and without performance that I had not become someone I was ashamed of. That turned out to matter more than I expected. Lily asked me recently. She's 11 now, old enough to sense the shape of things even when she doesn't know the details, whether I was happy. I thought about it for a moment. Not because I didn't know, because I wanted to answer her honestly. Yeah, I said. I think I actually am. She nodded like that was the right answer. Then she asked if we could order pizza, and I said yes, and that was that. The weightlessness, when it finally came, didn't arrive in a moment. It arrived the way mornings do, gradually, then all at once, until one day you notice that the light looks different and you can't remember exactly when it changed. You just know that it did, and that you're still here, and that the life in front of you is yours to do something real with. That was the part that surprised me most.